And here we go.
There's the W. Here's ignition.
Roger roll, Atlantic. Throttling up.
Did it just do a Kerbal?
Back to the moon and beyond.
Put that in the big bag, you know.
Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, it sure looks like a perfect flow.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
We did have an observation.
Equalize.
343 unfolds to go.
It's orange.
Water towers can fly!
Bingo! Right in the center. Where's Jacqueline? There it is!
That was surreal.
That's not what we want to see.
No!
Oh my God.
Yikes. You bet. Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Good early morning. You are taking a live look right now at Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, where SpaceX is getting ready to launch 3 satellites as part of the AST Space Mobile BlueBird constellation. We are finally back with those late night missions. It may not be a late night Starlink, but it still do be hitting different. I'm Sawyer Rosenstein. I will be your host for this early morning broadcast, but of course, I am not alone. Joining me on commentary as well today is Ryan Weber. Ryan, how's it going?
It's going fantastic. Yeah, early morning. It's 12:40 in the morning for me, but you know, it is what it is. Hey, Falcon 9 launch. Don't get on these too often, but here I am. How's it going?
Good. Yeah, this isn't a Starship thing, but good to have you with us. And yeah, 1:41 a.m. the current local time here on Florida's Space Coast. Also joining from the field, also where it is 1:41 a.m., getting eaten alive by the bugs out there, is Jerry Pike. How's it going, Jerry?
Hey, it's going good. Besides the rampant mosquitoes out here, it's a nice night out. You know, there's no wind, which doesn't help for the mosquitoes, but helps for the launch conditions. And the weather cleared out this afternoon. Had a little bit of kind of unexpected late thunderstorms as I was heading out here, but saw some offshore and is heading out, and skies are clear, and it's looking great for launch tonight.
That's what we like to hear. And there you can see from the American flag at the press site, basically no wind there. And pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, producing the stream is Kevin Michael Reed. As is always the case, you can tag us at NASA Spaceflight or at NSF with any questions you may have. We'll do our best to answer as many of them as we can throughout the broadcast today. So, this is not your ordinary Starlink, because this is not a Starlink launch. It is definitely a constellation of satellites, but it is the BlueBird constellation for AST Space Mobile. And this is part of their satellite network that they are building to allow for a strictly cellular broadband network, so that you can get cellular signal for your mobile phones from space. Although it's not one of those where it's just like Starlink that you can, use it in your phone in certain instances. This is kind of more for emergency situations or in places where there really isn't any ground-based cell signals to try and kind of blend the gaps of where there might be a lack of coverage. And again, there are 3 satellites on this one, BlueBird 8, 9, and 10. These are some heavy birds. And Ryan, can you kind of talk a little bit about what orbit these are going into and a little bit more about the mission?
Yeah, so the target orbit is Leo. It looks like it's kind of going into it almost looks like the inclination's about the same of a lot of our Starlinks, and it's around, I think, around 51 or so, because it kind of rides up right along the East Coast. And yeah, so these 3 satellites are going to get launched low Earth orbit. And as you're talking about, it's kind of a cellular constellation, which I kind of goes to show that SpaceX doesn't really care if they launch other people's broadband sats. They've launched Amazon, they've launched Viasat, they've launched BlueBird, they've launched OneWeb. To them, it's money. It's more launches for Falcon. It's money for them. So they're not really shy about launching satellites from their competitors and whatnot. For the booster today is booster 1077-29 on a 26-day, 20-hour, 34-minute, and 40-second turnaround, assuming it goes right at the opening of the window. It's launched, some of the notable ones it's launched, Crew 5, GPS-2, GPS-3, SV06, Inmarsat 6, F2, CRS-28, Galaxy 37, NG-20, and Optus-X, and then a whole bunch of Starlink missions. I'm not going to go ahead and read them all off. It's a lot of different Starlink missions. It's launched 566 sats, it's kind of nuts when you start getting to see how many stats these boosters have launched, and those numbers are going to get nuts with Starship. Your booster recovery is a short solid Gravitas, because of course, just read the instruction is no longer used anymore on the East Coast. It's now slated for Starship stuff, probably for transporting ships and boosters over to the Cape once it's all retrofitted. The fairing recovery for this is Bob, because I think Doug went out for maintenance or something along those lines. So, they're doing fleet maintenance and other things, so there's only a couple of vessels left in their fleet that they can actually use right now.
I mean, it seems like, obviously the pace has slowed down a bit. We're used to every 2 to 3 days, and it feels like it's been a while, even though it's only been, 5-ish days, 4 or 5 days since the last launch from this pad, if my quick head math is remembering rightly, which is dangerous at this hour of the morning, but... But I mean, yeah, it's slowed down compared to what it used to be, at least from Slick 40 here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Still an impressive pace, still the busiest launch pad in the world, which is pretty cool. Of course, there you go. You can see there are those 3 satellites. They are stacked 8 on the bottom, 9 in the middle, and 10 on the top. Now, here's the interesting thing. Some of you may have put 2 and 2 together of going, wait a minute, BlueBird, that sounds really familiar, doesn't it? Wasn't there a recent BlueBird launch? There was. That was BlueBird 7. And the reason that one may ring a bell is because that was aboard New Glenn on NG3. That was the one where it was delivered into the incorrect orbit. Off-nominal, I believe, was the term that they used, which led to the spacecraft eventually burning up in the atmosphere and not actually making it into its proper orbit. So it's very interesting to see 8, 9, and 10 coming around so quickly after the concerns that they had with 7. Because it's worth noting that SpaceX has launched earlier versions of this, the 1 through 5, which was basically the Mark 1 version, so to speak. The first of these Block 2 was BlueBird 6, which actually launched out of India. That was on the LVM-3, which is their medium lift vehicle for ISRO, the Indian Space Agency. And then BlueBird 7 also saw a singular satellite launch of BlueBird on New Glenn, which we just discussed the outcome of that. And now we have 3 more launching here, BlueBird 8, 9, and 10 on Falcon 9. So interesting to see them shopping around to all the different launch companies and launch providers here to get these satellites into their orbit. And we were talking about this, Ryan, a little bit before the show, the fact that these things are relatively hefty. I mean, the estimated mass for this launch is about 13.5 metric tons. And the other 2 missions, 6 and NG3, I won't say the next number, were, single satellite launches. I mean, it seems kind of strange to launch 3 of these when you have more powerful rockets only launching 1.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is because that was only the 3rd flight for New Glenn, so I don't know if they wanted to risk more than 1 sat on it. Which, I mean, turns out that if that were the case, they were right. Just say that. Falcon 9 is far more proven than New Glenn is, but the other kind of destroys that is the Indian launcher is pretty well proven. So it is a big question mark. But either way, Falcon 9 is launching 3. New Glenn only launched 1. So here we are. That's kind of thing. It's the only reason I can think of really as to why they only did a single one on New Glenn. But
I mean, based off what we've seen from the graphics put out by AST Space Mobile, I mean, they all seem to be about the same size, where they start off super small and then fold out really big, which I saw this on their website. And I thought was pretty cool of the comparison of a 6 foot tall person, randomly a BMW. Their initial test satellites that they did in the first Block 1s, and now the next generation Block 2, which is what we've seen launch on ISRO's, on New Glenn, and now on Falcon 9. And apparently it's one of the largest, it says their largest ever commercially phased array ever launched into low Earth orbit.
that's a pretty big phased array antenna. Like legitimately, that's a pretty big one. If you even compare it to some of the more powerful phased arrays that are used, like the SpaceX radar on U.S. Navy ships, that's even bigger than most of those, which is kind of nuts. That's a lot of coverage and a lot of bandwidth you can do with it, especially with an antenna that size.
Yeah, and that's in space,
2,400
not
square
on a
feet.
ship.
That's yeah. That's putting it into low Earth orbit. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, of course, it is worth noting as part of their contract with New Glenn, they will get a makeup mission for what happened with BlueBird 7, and there is spaceflight insurance to cover satellites in the event of an issue during launch with the launch provider's vehicle and something happens to your satellite. So that is where kind of a little bit of a background on this and BlueBird itself for these broadband internet satellites here. And of course, I saw a bunch of people wondering what is the weather looking like? Jerry, what is the weather out where you are?
The weather out here is looking great. Yeah, very clear skies. Just a tiny hint of clouds in the distance. The storms have cleared away. No winds, no really anything to speak of. It's just dark, clear skies tonight. So really nothing to write home about, which is good. So yeah, some great conditions out here.
And for the most part, it seems like the 45th Weather Squadron agrees over at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and Patrick Space Force Base. The official forecast is 90% favorable for today's launch, with the primary concerns originally being the cumulus cloud rule and anvil cloud rules. But as Jerry was mentioning, the storms that were there earlier have seemed to roll out of the way, which is a good thing. The only thing that was a concern was the booster recovery weather, which was listed as low moderate as opposed to just low. So we will have to see what SpaceX says in regards to the booster recovery weather, although they haven't said anything about it yet. So knock on wood that no news is good news in that case.
Yeah. Unfortunately, cannot speak for the weather off the coast of the Carolinas in the middle of the ocean, but here it's fine.
But you're not just hanging out in the middle of the ocean in your spare time over in the Carolinas.
A little bit of a trek, but yeah, no.
Yeah. Let me see what we have here in the queue. We had Mr. Fluffy saying, "Look what they did to my boy, Slick 6. Sad day." Yeah, for those who didn't see, Slick 6 over at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California went kaboom intentionally. They demolished the pad that was previously used for Delta IV Heavy, which has been retired. The pad was then taken over by SpaceX, and I believe the plan, Ryan, is for that to be used for West Coast Falcon Heavy launches.
Can I just say it took them a while to get to that point? Like they've had the EIS for a while. They've had the sign off and full control of that pad for a considerable amount of time, and they only just started to demolish stuff compared to 37 where they just did it instantly. I think so they did so just to give everyone a primer again, they did the EIS, or the environmental impact statement, that SpaceX and the FAA did in regards to Slick 6 out at Vandenberg was to launch Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. So it would have been a second Falcon Heavy pad. However, as we have seen, 39A is now relegated to Falcon Heavy only. in theory, they could use it for Falcon 9. They'd have to reconvert the TE back over again. So it's not like it'd be that big of an issue. But there, as we've also noticed, their cadence isn't really required for it because they're kind of at that point with Starlink where they want to start doing Starship Starlink missions. So they want to get Starship launches going. I have this feeling that SpaceX won't be for Falcon at all. I think they're going to do a programmable environmental assessment and mod the EIS and instead use it for Starship. I think that's going to get turned into a Starship pad. And in fact, considering the size of SpaceX, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a pair of pads like 37. That is a fantastic location to do Starship Polar launches for their AI sats if they want to do them. They could do as well as like SSO launches. And then of course, it's a much more secluded area to do NROL or NSSL launches with Starship, which the Space Force would love 100%. I just have this feeling it's not going to be for Falcon at all. I think with them demolishing it now, it's going to turn into Starship, 100%. So we'll have to wait and see something from the FAA for like a PEA to go out that, they want to modify the existing EIS for Starship. I'll wait to see when that happens, but I think it'll happen.
Here's my thought with that, and no offense to any of our viewers from California or from the West Coast, hi Fluffy, but they already had concerns with the number of Falcon 9 launches that were happening out of Vandenberg and the noise and the disruption. You want to add 33 Raptors instead, having it at that kind of a pace, going south towards Los Angeles, and if we're talking then returning back for a catch at Slick 6, then having it fly, again, either right around or right very close to LA proper. You really think they're going to go for that? I mean, Falcon Heavy on its own is going to be a tough sell, it seems like.
Well, they already sold it. The AIS was approved. So one way or the other, they were approved to launch Falcon Heavy and Falcon 9. I forget the number of launches that they got approval on that EIS. I have to go back and look at it. But they were 100% approved for that. So whether California or Los Angeles liked it or not, it was 100% approved for it. Starship, yes, is a whole other beast to get approval for. But considering what Starship means to the U.S., what it means to U.S. government, to the Department of Defense, and U.S. Space Force and everything else, I don't know if there's anything that California can really do about it. They can say all they want, but I don't think it'll matter. I think it'll just get approved anyways. Because remember, they made a stink about it, and then they just kind of backed away immediately after a bit. They just kind of backed off after a bit, as I think there was some kind of backroom stuff from the DoD that just went, no, we need this. So I don't know. I don't think Starship would have that much of an issue getting approved for that.
We'll see. I like to joke East Coast, West Coast, and make fun of people on the West Coast. But I will say that there's definitely been some organizations in the area that have protested the increase in launches. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, it would be cool to see Polar Falcon Heavy. That would be awesome. But yeah, we'll see if they end up doing that. Because a reminder, like we were talking about earlier, Starbase was originally going to be first Falcon regular. And then they said, you know what? We're going to make this into a Falcon Heavy dedicated launch site. And that never happened, and here we are now with Starship and Starbase. So, maybe. Now we are about 41 minutes to go, a little under that now, though, on this coast here in Florida, from launching the BlueBird 8, 9, and 10 satellites into orbit. And we are coming up now on the exciting part of the countdown here. So, hopefully, in the next couple of minutes, we will get a go for prop load from the launch director. Unfortunately, we don't get to actually hear that. They don't stream it anymore, and even so, we wouldn't hear anything with all the digital buttons and things that they use on their consoles for that part. But if everything is go, then they will start loading up The propellants at T-minus 35 minutes, starting off with the Stage 1, RP-1, the rocket propellant 1, which is a refined form of kerosene, and the liquid oxygen, both on Stage 1, the LOX. Stage 2 begins with just the RP-1 load, and then that will continue until about 20 minutes and 20 seconds to go until launch, at which point we will know that they have wrapped up that RP-1 load by what we call the best vent, basically as they begin the chill down of the lines for that liquid oxygen load to begin at approximately 16 minutes to go until launch. And a reminder, of course, with SpaceX's load and go technique that they use with these super chill propellants, that means that once they begin fueling Falcon 9, there is zero room to hold. So if they proceed with fueling the rocket, they are committed to that T0. And a reminder, as of right now, that T0 is 2:39 a.m. Eastern Time. If they do choose to push into the window, which we of course hope they don't because this is good weather and good everything right now, they do have until 4:15 a.m. Eastern if needed. Again, we don't want that. Fluffy's on your side, by the way, Ryan. Oh, we see a little bit of flag movement, a little bit more breeze. Mr. Fluffy saying, agreed with Ryan, Re-Slick 6 and Starship. West Coast, we are back. You all should have seen EJ's reaction. Classic. I mean, yeah, I'm sure it was. I'll have to watch that back.
I mean, it stinks to have the old shuttle, or what was supposed to be used for shuttle, we'll go with that way, and then repurposed for Delta IV Heavy stuff get demolished, but it's for I think it's going to be a pair of Starship towers that's going to go there, which will look crazy if Slick 6 ends up having caught boosters and ships at some point.
Oh my gosh, yes. That would be really cool. Okay, I can just also imagine, though, the number of alien comments that we would see from people all along the West Coast. We see them anytime there's a launch in Florida. And again, this one is a northeasterly launch, so probably won't be the fancy jellyfish views like you would see with the 6 a.m.s, but should still be a good show. And I would be surprised if you still see all of those, what was that in the sky comments, like in about 37 minutes.
You always see the launches out of Vandenberg, especially at the really, really cool hours, like the jellyfish hours. And you even see people seeing the thing all the way from Arizona on perfectly cleared nights on the west coast of the U.S. Because it can get nice and clear out there because the weather can get kind of fun out there. Imagine Starship jellyfishes from those, and then like the booster boost back and whatnot would look nuts. For people all the way to Arizona and everything, that'll look crazy if and when that happens, because I think it'll happen. There's no way it doesn't.
I'm just ready to see that from the Cape at this point. I mean,
yeah.
From what Gwen Shotwell said last week, potentially they're aiming for Flight 15 to be from Florida, with Flight 13 suborbital, Flight 14 orbital, and Flight 15 from Florida, probably 39A Starship pad. That's what I'm really looking forward to, of course, is Florida Starship, as being one of the Florida people here. And I'm sure that's going to be quite a view when it happens.
Maybe by the end of the year. We'll see.
Speaking of view, Caffeinated Design, the question saying, is the Max Brewer Bridge really the best / closest / only good option at this time of night for local viewing? Jerry, I know there's a lot of places that tend to close down after like 9 or 10 p.m. So for these 2:30 a.m. ones, what do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I wouldn't say the best period, but there is that caveat, right, of best at this time of night where stuff like Playa Beach and Jetty Park and all of those are closed unless you're camping or some of these other, kind of odd end things, which aren't pretty typical for getting in. So, I mean, the Max Brewer Bridge it's been a long time since I've seen a launch from there, specifically from 40. I think the last one I saw was a 39 launch from there. But I'm fairly certain that you have a very good pad view, and it will be going relatively, decently towards you as a northeast trajectory and going out that way. So yeah, the Max Brewer Bridge, I would say for a launch like this at this time of night is probably one of the better spots to see it up in Titusville. realistically, anywhere like along the waterfront in Titusville, you'll get a good view, especially if you have a pad view right there. There's so many different parks and places to pull off on the side of the road that you could, watch the launch from. But that elevated spot at the top of the bridge is definitely a little bit higher up than some of the other viewing locations over in Titusville. And especially for this time of night, it's just about as close as you can get that something that would be open or not open, that you wouldn't have to arrive hours and hours and hours early to go camping or something like that.
Right, because I mean, there are places like Cars Park where you can see a clear view of the pads, but you have to pay and be in there by, I think it's 9 or 10 p.m. And then you can't leave basically until it launches.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't want to. I mean, maybe if you do want to camp, that's a great spot. But if you're not into you don't want to camp and stay there all night, then for sure that's a great spot up on the bridge.
Yeah, and pretty much you can also get a good view anywhere along US 1, as you were pointing out in Titusville. There's a bunch of little random parks along there. Down by El Leoncito and Dogs R Us, there's a spot. That's where we had one of our live roving cameras in the field during Artemis 2, was right along the waterfront there, which has a good view. So you've got options. But yeah, for this hour and for a northeasterly launch, it's a good spot. Let's see. As Alfred Hitchcock helps direct that one view that we had from the port of the birds, let's get back to some more questions here. And at this point, also, if all is going well, there it is. Goodness gracious. Where's Gage when you need him? But we should be coming up shortly on hopefully seeing frost on the booster. Right now, we are seeing the view at the port from Rusty's at the port. And now we're going to keep an eye on the rocket itself to see if we see that frost line forming. Of course, chat, if you do see it, shout frost if you see it before us. So we'll look towards the base of the rocket. Right near that tree line is where we would start seeing a condensation form. And again, it helps that this booster has flown 28 previous times, so it has a pretty good soot line, so it makes it a lot easier to see the lighter colored venting and frost line on the darker background of the booster. Elias Greenhoff is wondering, Ryan, have we gotten any sort of info or update on the Starfall demo flight? And for those who don't know, what is the Starfall demo flight?
So I think it's slated. I think the FAA Ops Advisory said the 21st or the 22nd, so it'd be a couple of days from now. Basically, they intend to launch a couple of Starfall demos. I think it's into a suborbital trajectory, and have them re-enter. So, for those who don't know what Starfall is, it is basically a pica heat shield, so the ablative heat shield that's used on Dragon, on a puck. And then just behind the heat shield is a cargo bay with some COPVs for some cold nitrogen RCS, and then it's encapsulated. So it's like a puck with a heat shield. There you go, and whatnot, and then some, just extra heat shielding and whatnot on the top to protect it during your entry. Now, this is basically SpaceX's idea for getting material from orbit back down to Earth, and what they could also use it for is it can be used for point-to-point payload movement. So say they load up a Starship with Starfall, and then they launch Starship in a suborbital trajectory or something along those lines. They deploy a bunch of Starfall out, and then that Starfall re-enters where you want it to go, kind of like, say towards a forward operating base. And then Starship will reburn again and continue towards and get caught somewhere. Because point-to-point actual, transmission of material, you're not going to land, and I think we're seeing, I think that's Frost. There you go, that's Frost.
Absolutely, Frost.
You're not going to see Starship land at an FOB or anything like that, or land somewhere else. So the best way to get material either off Starship or from orbit is to just use a capsule to do it, especially to get it to certain areas or whatnot. Or to return stuff from orbit without having to use a ship as well. Because landing a Starship is not easy. like you have to have a launch pad for that or a tower for that, if you know, and that's not like everywhere in the world. Starfall solves that problem by just re-entering, popping a parachute, and it lands. So it's literally just you can just put stuff inside it, land, and bring it back from orbit. So that's the whole point of Starfall. They're going to do a demo flight of it in a couple of days or so. So I can't wait to see footage from it. It'll kind of look kind of cool. But basically, they're using the same heat shield design as on Dragon. It's not the same. It's not the stuff that's used on Starship. It's what's used on Dragon. So it's more, they could probably use it more than once, but not like a ton of times, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, as of now, it's scheduled for Sunday at 6:43 a.m. According to nextspaceflight.com, also available as the Next Spaceflight app in the Google Play and iOS app stores. So, yeah, it's a good way to keep up with the launch dates, especially as they do tend to change frequently. So, just things to keep in mind. But yeah, hopefully we see that in a couple days as well. Let's see. Space enthusiast wondering, do we know the size and weight of Starfall?
I'd have to look back at the FAA docs again. It came out like at least a week ago or so. I'd have to go back and read all the specs off again. I don't remember it off the top of my head. They're
Yeah.
not that big. Basically, you can stack them. They're enough size where you can stack them up inside like a Falcon 9 fairing, and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah. And again, that kind of goes back to like this payload as well. This is one thing that we were talking about early in the broadcast, and you and I were talking about before on the air, because we obviously do our best to research all the payloads and everything before we get into the actual launch broadcast itself. And you were saying, Ryan, that technically Falcon 9 has the capability to launch more mass than these 3 satellites into orbit. For those wondering, that is BlueBird 8, 9, and 10. This is part of AST Space Mobile's cellular-based broadband network, so that basically internet connection and cell connection to mobile phones in rural areas, or to help bridge the gaps where normal communication companies might not be able to reach. But yeah, they fit pretty tightly into that fairing, because it seems like they could fit more mass-wise. What is this, approximately 13.5 metric tons? Because these are some big boys.
Yeah, they're definitely some big ones, and I think because with an ASDS, you're looking at 17 tons for Falcon 9, give or take. So it's you. You couldn't mass wise. You might have been able to fit another one in, but volume wise, I don't think they could have. So
Yeah, it goes pretty near the top of the fairing. And I guess I'll ask you this, because it's something I've never thought of until now. I mean, looking at the pictures of payload fairing halves and things like that, can they push it all the way to the top, or is there an issue given the SpaceX pushing mechanism, the thrusters and parachutes for the return? Like, how much of that can they fill up if they have the mass for it? Can they go all the way to the tippy top?
there comes a point at which you can't fit in there. I would assume they could fit, because of course it taper, obviously, as you know, it tapers in. They could probably go right up to where the cylinder part ends and where it starts to taper in. That's probably as high as they can go inside that fairing. Just unless the satellite itself were to taper in slightly, I don't think it would be that much of an issue. There's a decent amount of room in there, but I don't think there would be much of an issue going into that tapered in part if the satellite was, designed that way. So
Yeah, and in terms of the encapsulation part and things like that, it's not like they put it together inside of the HIF, the horizontal integration facility, where they stack it in there. These are stacked elsewhere and then rolled to the launch pad to be integrated, right?
yeah, they basically there's certain payload integration areas. This might have even been done in Hangar X. I know they do a lot of Starlink stuff in Hangar X, but they're definitely they got locations where they stack payloads and stuff. So what they do is they take the payload adapter, they put the satellite or satellites onto a bus or stack or whatever onto the adapter, and then they enclose it in a fairing. They then hook up air conditioning systems and stuff to the fairing itself to help keep the climate inside, clean and air conditioned, so you don't overheat the satellites or anything along those lines. And then you see it just roll past the VAB if it's going to 37, and even then they just kind of roll it. They roll it that way to Slick 40. I don't remember if they will roll it over the bridge to Slick 40, but going either way is probably around the same distance, considering they have to go up through the industrial park and then to 40. So, but yeah, you vertically integrate it and then you roll it to the pad at the integration facility. They take it off, rotate it, and then hook it into the rocket on the TE, and then the rocket goes vertical at the pad. So,
yeah, it's a whole process for that. And for those who have seen the HIF, it's a decent size, but it's still relatively small. It's one of those where you don't have a lot of room. Just, oh yeah, let's integrate everything in there, rather than how about we stack it somewhere where we have extra space, like Hangar X. They also have, don't they have that payload processing facility on the Space Force side? So they have options there.
yeah, they mostly use that for NSSL payloads and NRO payloads. So or I guess NSSL kind of covers the whole thing, but any classified payload that goes on Falcon 9 gets done on the Space Force side. So you're not rolling a classified payload through, open areas. It already is, it's closed off, and then it just gets integrated somewhere else, so no one can ever see it. That's the whole point of that. So, yeah.
Almost like how, you have VIF A and VIF G now for ULA, with A for Amazon and G for government. It's kind of like that, except Hangar X is everything else, and this is specifically for those super secret national security stuff. Let's see here. 23 minutes to go. So far, so good on the countdown. Again, a couple more minutes left of that RP1 load into stage 2. So we'll be coming up on that best event in just a little bit here. I think that gives us enough time for a question here. Mechazilla is wondering, do you think Falcon 9 is going to get more Amazon Leo flights? As we were just talking about the A and Amazon. I mean, they've used up all of the ones that they originally purchased for Falcon 9, and the remainder were to be on Ariane 6, which there's one coming up, I believe, New Glenn, which is grounded, and Vulcan, which is grounded. So do you think they try and get more from SpaceX?
It wouldn't surprise me. That the whole thing I've said, and I said it since the incident happened. We'll call it the incident. That Blue Origin, since they're not flying, I'm gonna say with relative certainty myself, this is just me, they're not flying by the end of this year. No way, not a chance. I think they should lend or lease Jacqueline to SpaceX so they can increase their Falcon 9 launch cadence again once Doug's back, and then they launch a bunch of Amazon Leo sats. And those Amazon Leo missions only land on Jacqueline. Right?
Interesting.
That's what I think they should do. Like, come on. SpaceX doesn't care if they're launching Amazon Leo. They don't care. It's just money to them. It's more money. And you can start getting your constellation fitted out, because you're the only running launcher for Amazon Leo sats other than the final 551 Atlas 5, which is depressing, is Ariane 6 right now. New Glenn is not operational and won't be for a while. Vulcan, as you said, is a big question mark. Why not buy more Falcon 9s and offer to use the drone ship you have?
Yeah.
Come on.
Which, by the way, for reference, the next Leo launch is scheduled for about 5.5 hours from now out of French Guiana on Ariane 6. Just worth noting there. So they're still trying other providers, but yeah, their main two vehicles are kind of grounded at the moment. And we're hoping that Falcon 9 will only be grounded for another 20 minutes and 20 seconds, which would mean it lifts off on time. And speaking of right on time, it looks like it's very faint through the crew access tower there, but it looks like that's the 20-minute, 20-second vent happening.
Yeah, there's not a lot of wind, so it's kind of like pointed right at us. The vent off is pointed like right at the camera, so you can't actually really, you can barely see it. It's like right around the interstage area there. And there goes more. There you go.
Yeah, now it's very visible.
Yeah, it starts off slow as they push gas through, and then as they push more and more gas, and then they start pushing liquid through. You then start getting liquid basically coming out of that vent, and once it's chilled down to the correct temperature, and you're getting like pure liquid oxygen coming out, they then close it off once it's to the correct temperature, and then that's when they start loading. They do the same thing with Starship, same thing's done with New Glenn, same thing's done with literally every rocket ever. For cryogenic fuels, you'll vent it off or you'll recirculate it, and once it gets to the correct temperature for whether you're subcooling or not, you shut off the vent or the recirculation system, and then you just start loading, basically.
Yep, good old thermal conditioning. So it's not even just because the load and go, but it is worth noting that because of Falcon 9, the super chilled propellants, it is colder than the already normally cold liquid oxygen running through it. So it's even colder than that. So they got to prepare everything for that. But at the same time, the benefit is it's more densified, so you can fit more in there, which is great because then you can lift more and have better, efficiency with that. The problem then becomes, with it being that cold, as soon as you shut off those prop load lines about 90 seconds before launch, if you don't launch in those 90 seconds, so much of it is going to, condense away or sublimate away, whichever the case is, that it really, you don't get the same efficiency, and that's kind of why they don't do that. So that's why they have to go where they don't. Let's see here. Going through some questions. Here was a support earlier. $10 super chat from Mans on Mars saying Elon versus the Borg in 2336. Who wins?
Does Elon have warp technology with quantum torpedoes or like Asgard plasma beam weapons or ZPMs? Because if he doesn't, he's losing. I'm just going to say that. We could go down a whole sci-fi thing on what he has available. I'm just going to say he probably loses to the Borg. He probably gets assimilated. Yeah.
Interesting. Bold claim. I mean, at that point, I'm rooting for Heat Death of the Universe, but yeah, I guess that makes sense. Anyway, so
what are the Borg going to learn from him? Though that's my thing. He might be smart, but it's the Borg. They already have transwarp, so
Gotta love nerdy talk in the early morning hours. Again, almost 15 minutes away, about 16 minutes and 50 seconds to go-ish, until the launch of Falcon 9 tonight here in Florida with BlueBird satellites 8, 9, and 10, for those just joining in. So far, they've started the prop load, and that seems like everything is go at this point. Of course, we don't get to hear any of their call-outs till somewhere between 5 to 15 minutes before launch, if we hear any, so although all the visual indicators are there that all is going well. Here's a question from Kids wondering, can I see this from Jacksonville? Jerry, would they be able to see it from Jacksonville, and kind of just a reminder of what the trajectory is for this one?
Yeah, so I mean, with this northeast trajectory here, I feel pretty certain that you could definitely see this from Jacksonville, somewhere around the time of MECO and into stage 2 ignition. I think it would definitely be visible, assuming clear skies, which it looks pretty clear. I would imagine most up the seaboard here. So yeah, I feel like there's a good chance that you would be able to see it. It wouldn't be spectacular, but it would be visible for sure.
And of course, a lot of that depending on clouds as well. because we've had some storms roll through here in Florida. I don't know how it's like currently. I saw some people saying it was raining in Georgia. But I mean, if you're along the eastern seaboard and it's clear, it definitely doesn't hurt to go outside and just take a look and see if you can see anything. And of course, as always, I know I say it a bunch, but if you do see anything and you happen to catch photos or videos, you can tag us at NASA Spaceflight on Instagram or on X. We're also on Facebook, Threads, TikTok, Blue Sky. Did I say them all? X, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Blue Sky. There we go. Tag us on any of those. I do like seeing them if you get that. And of course, good chance to go follow them if you don't already. Get all the cool Today in Spaceflight things, especially over on the Facebook page, like today being the anniversary of Valentina Tereshkova's flight, the first woman in space, which is pretty cool. Oh, man. Glad it's not raining right now, though. Although the sun may not be out tonight, but if for when it is sunny and the sun rises, it's going to get hot out there, and you're going to want to stay cool and protected from the sun at the same time. And that's why we have the NSF sun shirts. A couple of your favorite designs there. You see we have the one with our Artemis 2 patch. We have one where you can look like SLS with the SRBs for arms and the orange tank there. And those are photos taken by our photographers that are then helped into that, just saying. So you can check out all the different sun shirts there. Of course, the TPS, the thermal protection system one. We have a shuttle. Oh, there's a shuttle version? Oh my god. I didn't know there was the shuttle one now. I know we had the
Did
Starship
you not know
Files.
that there's a shuttle one?
How
I
did
knew
you
about
not know there was a shuttle one?
I knew about
You
the
know,
Starship
here's a
one.
question. Which shuttle is it? Because I know.
Knowing Chris Bergen, it's probably Atlantis, but what is it?
It's Discovery. It's actually my photo from the Udvar-Hazy Museum.
Cool.
It's a fun fact there.
Nice. Well, yeah, again, we got all of our summer merch, especially with summer just a couple days away here in the northern hemisphere, and it's going to get hot. So you can stay cool and look hot while it's hot outside. Shop.nasaspaceflight.com. And for all your beach needs there, of course, I still lie there. It's one of my favorites with the towel. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely not hot tonight, but this sun shirt that I am wearing is very good at protecting against mosquitoes. I'll give it that too. So if you need a mosquito shirt, this also works well.
Yeah. We'll see. I may have to update the shuttle photos because I'm going to be heading out for a preview of the Space Shuttle Endeavour exhibit in California next week. So we'll have to see if we can get an actual shuttle shirt there as well, which they're stacking that one vertically for those who don't know, like with external tank and SRBs as if it were launching, which seems really cool. I'll, of course, report back to you on if it is cool or not, but, I mean, it's got to be because it's the best shuttle. It's Endeavour. About 12 and a half minutes to go now. Mr. Puppy is asking, I think it's probably worth going over this again. Is this the same satellite New Glenn failed to put into the correct orbit? Yes and no. It's not the actual satellite itself. Obviously, that one on NG3, BlueBird 7, was launched. It was deployed into the wrong orbit and eventually burnt up in the atmosphere. So that one's not in orbit anymore. It only lasted a short while in space anyway. But if you're wondering the satellite base, yes, these are the same BlueBird AST Space Mobile Block 2 satellites. So the first of the Block 2s launched on an ISRO launch vehicle, so it's India Space Agency. The next one launched on New Glenn. And then, of course, we have what you see now on Falcon 9, where there are 3 of them inside that fairing on the top. SpaceX did also launch 5 of their Block 1 satellites as well. So it's not like this is their first time launching on it. That was back in September of 2024 when they did that one. But yep, 3 more coming up. 3 basically the exact same kind as what was supposed to launch on 7, just stacked up and a whole bunch of them to go. And they are, so we were talking about earlier, they are big. I mean, just the wingspan of the deployed array is 2,400 square feet. The largest ever commercial phased array in LEO. It's massive, especially when compared to, for some reason, in their graphic, BMW. But still.
It's a pretty large phased array antenna. It's like that's pretty big. One of the largest There is. I mean, there's of course larger ones for surface-based early warning radar stations and things like that. But like to put that into LEO is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and it's a commercial opportunity. It's not some kind of, NOAA or NASA or, other three-letter agency government putting it up there.
Right?
It's this is a private company building this and launching it, AST Space Mobile, which they do have some deals with other major name carriers to assist with this. So basically, the goal, according to AST Space, is for these satellites to help create a mobile broadband network in low Earth orbit. So if there are areas that have really poor to no cell signal coverage or bandwidth in that area, these satellites are meant to kind of cover those gaps, especially for places that are more remote or lived in those underserved regions. The goal is to provide them at least with some communication access. And that's what 8, 9, and 10 will do, joining the fleet that they had of 1 through 5, which was the Block 1, the other Block 6 in orbit, the one that launched on India's medium launch vehicle, and now the one that you see on your screen on Falcon 9. And so hopefully all 3 of these will deploy into the proper orbit, unlike BlueBird 7, which was on New Glen's 3rd flight. Not the most recent one that exploded, but the one just before that. Gotta say, Ryan, those look like relatively clear fairings, minus the giant logo on the screen.
Yeah. I gotta see if those fairings are how new they are. Let me see if SpaceX is saying what they are again. They don't say on their website which one it is. But I would assume those are relatively new fairings. They'll probably say at some point during the telecast how new they are. But yeah, they don't look very used.
They really don't, and that's funny because in comparison, we have a we have a heavily flown booster here. This booster is going on its 29th flight, booster 1077. Ryan, can you remind us some of those big missions that this booster did and where it's going to be landing in hopefully 16 minutes from now?
Yeah, so a couple of the missions that it's done so far is Crew 5, GPS 3, SVO6, Inmarsat 6 F2, CRS 28, Galaxy 37, NG20, Optus-X, and then a bunch of Starlink missions. It's going to be landing on a Shortfall of Gravitas. It's usually 600 some odd kilometers downrange, give or take. Is usually where that kind of is, if I'm remembering correctly. I might not be, but anyways, they like to do their ASDS or autonomous support drone ship landings, basically, because for a payload this heavy, you kind of need to do a drone ship landing. I think if they took a sat off, they might be able to do an RTLS off this mission if they only did 2 sats. So instead they're doing a drone ship landing with 3 satellites. So yeah, that's where we're headed here, hopefully in about 7 minutes. Well, a little over 7 minutes, but it'll be launching in like 7 minutes, if you know what I mean. So you're talking while muted? I don't know.
I just gave a whole speech. Yep. So anyway, like I was saying, yeah, hopefully, usually about 8 to 8.5 minutes after, and that's when we will hopefully see that launch and see those engines fire up. Which, speaking of those engines, as we pass the 7-minute mark, there should be something happening.
Yeah, after the T-minus 7-minute mark, we get Falcon 9 engine chill. The next big milestone that we're looking at will be T-minus 1 minute when they'll command the flight computer to begin final pre-launch checks. At the same time, all 4 tanks will be pressurized to flight pressures. And then at T-minus 45 seconds, the launch director verifies go for launch. T-minus 3 seconds, the engine controller commands engine ignition. So that's when you'll have the ignition of all 9 Merlin 1D engines at the base of the Falcon 9 booster. Those will ignite, they'll ramp up to full thrust, do health checks in that span. Once everything's verified go, clamps release, and lift off at T0.
There we go. So yeah, that engine chill underway, and we should be getting close to the strong back retract. So basically, for those who don't know, that is a metal structure that is up against the side of Falcon 9. Not the one that you see on your screen right now. That is the crew access tower, which they're not using because A, this isn't crew, or B, this isn't an ISS resupply mission where they have to do late load payloads. This is just satellites to low Earth orbit. So the transporter erector, the metallic structure, is what rolls it out from the horizontal integration facility, raises it vertical, and while it's out at the pad, provides all of the important data lines, connections, cable lines, ground power, propellant load lines, venting, all of that. I like to call it also the air conditioning, so to speak, of the fairings and the spacecraft. So normalizing all the pressures and temperatures in there. All of that comes from that one metallic structure. And they're going to lean that back a whopping 1.8 degrees, which may not seem like a lot, but apparently it makes a big difference because once we hit T0, it will throw all the way back. And one of the benefits, Ryan, I think that people don't realize is it allows you to kind of have shorter umbilicals. And worst comes to worst, if something gets roasty toasty, it's not as hard to replace, right?
Yeah, partially bringing the TR back, which it hasn't done yet. I think the T0 is a bit wonky on this one, or we're trying to figure out exactly what the T0 is, and it's kind of hard with the stream and everything else. So bear with us on that end. I think it just started to move. Basically, those two clamps right below will come undone, just like that, and then the strong back will slightly come back. Once it does that. Basically, they're getting ready to then throw back and disconnect everything all at once. So it kind of helps just in the preparation to, if I can say English, to disconnect all the QDs and then throw back the whole thing and whatnot. So yeah.
Yeah, and again, if you need to replace them for some reason, because they have such a high cadence at this launch pad, it's relatively easy to just replace a smaller amount than it is to replace a whole bunch of long cables. Now, under about 3-ish minutes to go. We'll say that. So we should be coming up close to that. And again, at T-minus 1 minute is when the Falcon 9 enters startup. And that's when all of the onboard computers and everything will take control of the count. And at that 45-second mark is when we hopefully hear the launch director give that go for launch. But Ryan, there's still a couple of propellant tanks that are being filled and should be wrapping up momentarily, right?
Yeah, they're finishing up loading on both stages. They'll top those off, and then of course at around T-minus 1 minute, so probably in about a minute and a half is kind of what we're looking at here. It's trying to do the delay of the stream and everything else. They'll pressurize the tanks for flight with 1 minute to go. And then they'll do their final health checks in that final minute and make sure everything's good for launch. They'll give the go for launch, and then they'll go. So
all of that hopefully to come. We know that LOX load is complete. All the liquid oxygen on board there. So just a couple more seconds with everything fully fueled. And then at T-minus 90 seconds is that gas closeout. So that's when you'll see a whole bunch of kind of vapors and what looks like steam and things erupting from around the base of the vehicle. That's just any remnants of any propellants or oxidizers or things that you don't want floating around with fire going nearby. Vent all of that out, purge the lines so that everything is nice and tidy when Falcon 9 hopefully lifts off. And again, we're working on figuring out the exact T0 to the second, but the time on the clock is approximately 2:39 a.m. Eastern Time when we expect this to launch. Our camera feeds are a little bit faster than SpaceX's with less latency, so that's why you might see the clocks slightly different from each other. But if all goes well, then we will get the confirmation of Falcon 9 entering startup in just a couple seconds. And then if all goes well with startup, again, hopefully that go for launch, and then we get ready for liftoff.
For confirmation that Falcon 9 is in startup.
Let's listen to the calls.
Falcon 9 has entered startup.
So now the autonomous flight computers have taken over the launch countdown, and both stages are pressurizing for launch.
There we go. So next up should be the LD verifying go for launch.
Go for launch.
There it is. There is the call out. Go for launch. So should be about 30-ish seconds now to go until liftoff. You will see the water deluge system activated the base of Falcon 9, followed by those engines igniting with a nice little green flash of T-Tab, and hopefully liftoff. It does take the sound a little bit to get to our microphones once it launches, but we will let you listen in after liftoff. So in the meantime, let's keep an eye on the base of the rocket here. See if we can see the deluge activate, and then wait for that big old flash and ignition. As we stand by. There we go. Ignition. And liftoff of Falcon 9. Both Falcon and BlueBirds. All the birds taking to the early morning Florida sky. Listen to that rumble tonight. Goodness gracious, that's a loud one. Falcon 9 passing max Q. That's when it faces the most aerodynamic forces pushing against it in flight. Also passing the speed of sound there, as evident by that trail that it leaves behind. Now, as it continues this climb, we should see that plume start to expand outward a bit. Makes it easier to see those 9 individual engines firing. And there's an onboard view looking down the booster, B-1077, on its 29th launch. Also, as it gets higher up, especially at night, you get to see the color transition from the reds to the orange to the purple to the blue right before 3 events that happen in rapid succession. First being MECO, main engine cutoff, when those 9 engines shut down, followed by first and second stage separation. And then lastly, the engine on the upper stage, the Merlin vacuum, will ignite in what is known as second engine start 1. So we should be coming up on that just a couple of seconds from now. And there we go. There's MECO. Stage separation, and on the right side of your screen we should see MVAC ignition. And there we go. Stage 2 continuing its climb uphill with those 3 BlueBird satellites on it. Stage 1 now working its way towards the drone ship, a Shortfall of Gravitas, located towards the northeast of where it launched from, which was the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. The drone ship positioned kind of near the Carolinas offshore, about 500 to 600-ish kilometers to the northeast from where it launched. Next up will be the fairing jettison. Those 2 halves will separate away, revealing the 3 satellites for BlueBird to the vacuum of space, now that they are no longer needed. And there we go. You can see one of those fairing halves going away in the distance. I would not be surprised if we don't get any satellite views, given that all of the publicly available photos from AST Space of the satellite had a lot of things blurred out, I'm guessing for regulatory trade reasons, known as ITAR. So I don't think we'll be seeing the satellites on this one, but there are 3 of them, BlueBird 8, 9, and 10, and they will release The first one about 50 minutes after launch. That would be BlueBird 8. Then 5 minutes later is BlueBird 9, and 5 minutes after that would be BlueBird 10. So they're all within about 5 minutes of each other. Right now, the first stage, though, coming up on apogee, the highest point in its trajectory. It's either 125 kilometers. The speed will even out. There it goes, and then it will start to pick up speed again as it passes over that highest point. There we go. With that, Falcon 9's first stage is coming back down. No more upward momentum in that case. It is now going down towards that drone ship. Still 124 kilometers in altitude, still at about 7,000 kilometers an hour, and that is going to be slowed down very quickly in the next 3.5-ish minutes, hopefully down to 0 softly on the deck of the drone ship, a Shortfall of Gravitas. Which, for this one, the landing will happen around the same time as second engine cutoff, very similar to the kind of timelines that we see for the Starlink launches. So about 8 minutes after we see the landing burn, and about 40 seconds after that, so about 8 minutes, 40 seconds into flight, is when we should see SECO 1, second engine cutoff 1. And I say that because there is a second burn as well later on in the mission, known as SES2, although that is only a 6-second burn, just to get it into that deploy orbit. Right now, still working towards that preliminary orbit that it's going into as we approach 6 minutes into flight. Stage 2 continuing to pick up speed and altitude. Coming up next is going to be that entry burn. Ryan, can you walk us through what the entry burn is and what we're going to see?
So basically, the entry burn is to activate a couple of Merlin engines. It's called, or you can call it supersonic retropropulsion. Basically, it's to slow the booster down as it starts to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, and it also creates kind of like a force shield of exhaust off the engines in order to protect the booster during initial phases of re-entry. Falcon 9 needs this because it's an aluminum booster with other, and whatnot. It prevents damage to the engines, prevents damage to the booster. It's also the main reason why you see the booster get as sooty as it does, because all that carbon-rich exhaust just sticks to the side of the booster after the fact. And there's the entry burn right there. And the other things don't need it. Like Starship Super Heavy does not need that. It just kind of comes back in and tanks the heat. Which is always fun to see. I can't wait to see an actual Block 3 go through that. 19 did, but didn't because it was kind of out of control. But anyways, yeah, and so that's what the entry burn is for. Now it'll start to get into the thicker parts of the atmosphere as it goes in. The grid fins will take control, and it will glide itself to the drone ship, where it'll then activate its landing burn and land on ASOG. So, yeah. Sawyer?
All right, 8 minutes now coming up on that landing burn. So once they cut back to that view, keep an eye out on the left side of the screen. You may actually see the light of the drone ship once we go back to that first stage view. Meanwhile, second stage continuing to burn as planned from the looks of it. And should be starting up that single engine landing burn. There we go. Grid fins doing their work now. You'll see them steering. Any moment we should see a Shortfall of Gravitas, the drone ship. Pokes through the clouds here. There's the drone ship standing by for landing leg deploy. And touchdown. A successful landing for B-1077, completing its 29th flight. And very soon will be the next booster to join the 30 Flight Club, a relatively limited club at the moment. And we have confirmation of nominal orbital insertion. That is what we like to hear. Of course, as mentioned, there's still one more burn about 45 minutes into flight. It's a 6-second burn, and then they will have the deployments going in about stages of 5 to 6 minutes, starting 54-ish minutes after liftoff. And then again, 5-minute increments for 9 and for 10. Beautiful. And of course, we'll work on getting some replays from all of our different cameras that we have out there tonight for this. So stick around for those. I don't know if we have Jerry back. Jerry, if we have you, how was the launch for that one?
Yeah, I mean, you said that it was a little loud. I mean, it was definitely pretty loud, but the VAB squeal, a really, really long, pronounced VAB squeal on this launch. So that was a little bit of a surprise. You know, every once in a while we get something like that, but it's a little bit more than typical for a launch like this. So that was neat to see. A little bit of vapor as it kind of touched through one little cloud there is pretty, but yeah, it's a nice way to end off the night here.
Yeah, and again, we always talk about the VAB squeal, and yeah, for those who don't know, it's the vibration of the panels on the side of the VAB with the way that the engines resonate with it. You get that kind of squealing sound, like a bottle rocket. And it's one of those things where half the people say, I never hear it, and the other half of the people are going, how can you not hear it? There really isn't much of an in-between. The meantime, let me thank some people here, and I'll make sure we can show their names on the screen so I can thank you all as well. Jay Floyd saying, humorously still waiting till a launch will aim downrange towards Washington State. I want to see one, dang it. I mean, that would be wild. That would absolutely be wild to see it. But if it is going towards Washington State, then I think we have bigger problems. Bideford with a $25 super chat. Hi, Bideford. Saying, who would have ever imagined back in the 60s that we would have boosters reusable over 2 times, let alone in the 30s? Wow. Yeah, I'm ahead of myself, but I'm staying positive that once it lands, 30. Yes, that was right before the launch, and it did earn its Dash 30. SpaceX is weird with the numbering, so even though it's now completed 29 flights, it is 1077-30. And Lords of Random with the Capcom membership. Welcome to that. Capcom and above, in addition to all the awesome member perks here on YouTube, also gets access to the NSF Discord, where you can chat with us about spaceflight, a bunch of people actually. And then, of course, you've got all the different spaceflight channels. You also have Food Talk, where you can make fun of Jack's bagel choices. We've got Sports Talk, so we can talk about how the Knicks were amazing. All different kinds of channels. There's something in there for everyone. So,
and how the Hurricanes beat Vegas.
Yeah,
they beat the evil Empire. Thank God.
Yeah. But hey, I was in there in the members Discord celebrating after the Knicks game, so you never know who you might find in there. And there's looking at some of the replays now on the left side of your screen there. Kevin Michael Reed getting those up for us. This is the wide view here, showing all of the tracking people there, getting their stuff ready, including Jerry. Man, that's the illustration of turning night into day. I say it a bunch, but that's literally what it looks like. Night turns into day with these launches. It is so unbelievably bright. Golly. That's such a cool view. You see how long it lights up the sky, especially with not as many clouds. It kind of keeps the general sky brighter versus where there is a cloud deck. It's even brighter initially, and then once it punches through the cloud deck, then you get the clouds actually illuminating a bit. So it looks like there's sun shining through the clouds until it all disappears as the rocket gains altitude. It's one of those things where if you've never seen one in person, add it to your bucket list. You really should. SpaceX seems to be launching often enough anyway that you can come on down and there's a good chance you'll see one if you happen to take a week in vacation down here. But yeah, Absolutely beautiful. This a peek. Of course, they put the packages and everything there right in front of our fleet cam over at Rusty's at the port. But still, getting to see that glow at liftoff there. Also, if you're in for a launch, great place to either hang and watch a launch or grab a bite to eat when they're open. So you should totally check out Rusty's. God, I love it. That's also why people are like, oh, you really prefer night launches? I'm like, well, not always. But night launches have that special charm of just how bright they make everything. This is the other one that we have at Rusty's. And I love how like the boosters are saying hi to each other. You've got 1077 launching, and the one that just came back from the Starlink the other day on the left side of the screen. Which one was that, Ryan? I'm trying to remember which booster. I don't know if you know off the top of your head.
For which one?
The one that's in port. With the lights pulled up there.
Stand by.
I think it's 1080.
Yeah, 1080. Starlink 1054 is what it was.
Yeah. So you've got the BlueBird one launching, and then the one kind of floating in a way. If they've got the cap on top of it with the legs folded up, which they'll then move over and lower it horizontal onto a transporter, bring it over to Hangar X for refurbishment and to fly again. And that's exactly what the booster that you see flying is going to happen to as well. In a couple days, it should return back to Port Canaveral, where they will then do the same thing of offloading it and then returning it to Hangar X for refurbs to get back into flight again. This from one of our robotic cameras that we have at the Launch Complex 39 press site on the NASA side of things. And again, there is a difference. That's why we try and differentiate Cape Canaveral Space Force Station versus Kennedy Space Center. There is a dividing line. And again, one of them is a federal agency. The other is a military installation. So it's a little bit of a mix there. It's kind of hard to tell the difference, but if you say it wrong on air, yeah, we hear all the comments. Still gorgeous lighting. This is another one of our robotic cameras that we have there, which again, you can keep an eye on all of those during our, over on Space Coast Live, our 24/7 cameras. Love the view. Again, that one with less of the orange glow, you can really see how bright that is. Believe this is Jerry Pike's track, which I know is not easy, A, at night, B, when you have bugs trying to bite the heck out of you. The mosquitoes and all the gnats and things are really out with at night near the summer with the Florida humidity. So trying to swat those away while tracking a launch is impressive. That plume, just how long it goes, the expanding there. And the punch through the clouds. Beautiful. And again, that's usually the indicator that it's passed through max Q when you see that sort of trail behind it. It's around that point that we see it. That's also about when it enters the transonic regime, going faster than the regime, going faster than the speed of sound. Goodness gracious, words are hard, apparently.
It's late. Or early. Whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah. Something like that. Oh, man. But yeah, another beautiful one. Bideford wondering, is it worse in Florida or Starbase for mosquitoes? Jerry, which do you think?
I actually haven't really been to Starbase and like really peak Starbase bug mosquito season. So I'm tempted to say Florida just because I've been here forever and it's bad. But Starbase, I haven't had terrible experiences with mosquitoes, luckily. So I have to say Florida for now, but I know that they do get very bad down there.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's Starbase because you do have, there's a lot of marshland there, and you are right on the ocean, at Florida, but like the wetlands area around Starbase is all stuff like there's so much still water around there. It's yeah, it could be a tie, to be honest. You think about it.
Oh, jeez.
It's very noticeable. Like you can walk like by the press site proper where the buildings are, and the mosquitoes aren't bad. But as soon as you come down here to the lawn, with like the grass and then like the turning basin next to it, they're really bad.
Oh, yeah. No, I've been eaten alive for some reason, especially if we go out for like remote camera setups at night in the tall grass. Those are when it's really the worst. And then if you have anything with the light out there, it's going to swarm right to it. And inevitably means that it'll end up getting you too. Which is a good thing you don't have any bright screens or anything running, right, Jerry?
No, definitely not. I actually put the headlamp pointing the other direction to try to attract them a little bit, but it didn't help that much.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's rough out there. That's why, again, I always bring my own bug spray. Literally, there's a brand called Sawyer that makes bug spray, so it works out great. Oh, man. Gabriel was wondering, though, why are jellyfish launches a lot rarer to view from the Cape than out at Vandenberg? I mean, Ryan, it really is just timing of the launches, right?
Yeah, it's just timing is really what it is. I don't know. I think it's timing, and a lot of the Starlink ones are going into a slightly different orbit than the ones out of the Cape because they do that for their like SSO shells and stuff like that. So when you want to go into that specific shell and that specific time is different compared to say the Cape. So your times are slightly different.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter, though, that one's going polar versus west to east, right?
It depends on where in the shell you're filling it out. Really? So like say because you do a single launch into a single inclination. Well, you may only fill part of that orbital shell out. And say you want to fill out the next part of that, well, the train you launched is now all the way, on the other side. Say it's near the other side of the Earth, so you launch behind it to then fill out the next one. So the time's going to be different there to fill that out, and then you want to fill out behind it as well, or you want to fill out on a slightly different inclination or a slightly different altitude in the shell. So your launch times are going to be different because you're trying to fill out an orbital area rather than, say, one point in space. So your times for launching are going to be different and whatnot. So that's why it would change between the two. Why it's more often that they have jellyfish launches in Vandenberg, I mean, I don't know. But I do know that that's one of the reasons why the launch times are different, especially with Starlinks.
And I mean, recently the Starlinks that we've been seeing have been around what would be jellyfish time, assuming they go at the top of the window. And there's the caveat to it, is a lot of times it will slip into that window. But lately they've been opening like 6:30, 6:45 a.m. within the range of being able to see it, especially if it goes up the coast. So... Yeah, I do miss them. I will say that. I haven't seen a good jellyfish in a while, but I also tend to sleep through most of the early morning ones, and haven't really had a good evening one of late, have we? Also, ready for SpaceX to do the switch, because for those who don't know, about halfway through the year is when they kind of switch from the northeasterly launches to the southeasterly launches. And a lot of that has to do just with Florida weather. The seas are a lot calmer towards the north as you get into the winter time. And when you get to the summertime, it tends to be better sea conditions towards the southeast, near the Bahamas and that area. So hopefully soon we see it switch to those southeasterly trajectories. And lately, it tends to be that the southeasterly trajectories are the ones that end up being at like 2, 3 in the morning. We get to those late night Starlinks that do be hitting different. So hopefully we're getting back to that.
How ready are you for the late night Starship Starlinks? For those like 2:30 a.m. Starship Starlinks. It's like, yeah, that they're going to be launching the most powerful rocket in the world at 2:30 at night.
I mean, who needs Windows? It's fine. Yeah, it's going to be interesting when that does happen. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of noise complaints. Although most of the people seem to be okay with Falcon 9 now. They happen so often. I know we've talked to Julia Bergeron, who's also in the Cape team, and she said that sometimes she sleeps through them, sometimes she gets woken up by them because then the windows will start rattling, and it's like, oh, okay. It launched, so back to sleep I go. The joys of Florida. I mean, that's kind of what you sign up for on the Space Coast. It's literally in the name. It's the Space Coast. There are different coasts as you go up and down Florida. So, like, you've got the Treasure Coast, which is right below Cape Canaveral in that area, and then you go north, and that's when you start to get Space Coast, so Brevard County in that area. And yeah, it's literally in the name. Let's see. A lot of people saying that Starbase apparently has the worst mosquitoes. At least that's what Dr. Holly said. Hi, Dr. Holly. Good to see you.
It wouldn't surprise me considering where it's at. And that's the other thing too is there's going to be a pretty good rivalry between the 3 main Starship launch sites eventually on which has the worst mosquitoes. And at that point, you're talking whether it's the Cape, Starship, Starbase, or Louisiana, because that area, oh boy, that area is swampland. Like
the bayou for sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of. I mean, that's one of the things you got to pack. You got to pack your patience for a launch, and you got to pack your bug spray, no matter where it is at this point.
Yeah, that they're gonna have to do a land buy and a swap, and then they have to get Army. They'll have to get Army Corps of Engineer approval to build there. They'll have to have an environmental impact statement in order from the FAA and from local authorities. Although Louisiana is a lot more lax even than even Texas. So the ES shouldn't be that hard to push through, but they'll have to do all that stuff in order to get approval to build on that land. And then, of course, then they got to build, at which point you bring in dredgers, you bring in a bunch of sand. They'll do a lot of stuff via ships rather than via the road because it's a lot easier to access via shipping and the locks that they have down there from the Army Corps of Engineers. And they'll have to fill in the entire area, do a lot of original groundwork before they can even think about building buildings in certain areas, let alone a launch pad. It'll take a while to get that area ready to go. That's a long-term thing for like SSO launches, and also looking at like launch trajectories out of there. If they kind of do a slight dogleg going around New Orleans, by the time they go over Florida, they're pretty well into the upper atmosphere. And also, by the time that they get that pad up and operational, that site up and operational for Starship launches, assuming it's for Starship launches, which I assume it is at this rate, they'll already have launched Starship a ton out of the Cape and out of Starbase. At that point, Starships should be pretty dang reliable, because I don't think that site would be usable for at least the next 8 to 10 years minimum, or something along those lines. That's my guess. I think it'll take a while to get it operational. So at that point, Starship could have launched already a couple hundred times. It's not going to be the 2,000-3,000 that SpaceX it is. Spoiler, that ain't happening. But I think it'll definitely be a couple hundred times. And at that point, it's less of a concern to launch it over Florida, or partially over Florida at that point. But it's not like the booster is going over Florida. It'll just be the ship.
Just the ship.
Yeah, but like if you've launched it enough at that point, it's reliable enough, right? Once you've launched it a couple hundred times, I mean, it's reliable. Unless they start having problems again, but like you see how reliable Falcon 9 is. If they get Starship to that point, why wouldn't you be able to launch the ship over Florida or over the Yucatan or like that little strip in Mexico?
I mean, I guess they have some experience given the space shuttle basically came in over land all the way over California, Arizona, Texas, then around the Gulf, and then would sweep over the state, because obviously it has to go from the west side of the state to the east side of the state and do all the S-turns and the hack.
When Starship comes back, depending on the inclination, when Starship comes back to the Cape, it's got to go over pretty much the entire United States. When it comes back to Starbase, it goes over northern Mexico and the southern parts of like California, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas. Like when it re-enters. So to launch and have the ship go over Florida, or even, I don't think they'll ever do it, at least not soon, where they could launch an inclination and it launches over land and they do a boost back over land. I don't think that'll happen. But there will come a point at which, you know, a rocket is launched so much and is so reliable that it's like, well, why can't you just launch it over land rather than over water? Because the whole reason we do it over water is because it's a rocket, it's explosive, and it's safer that way. Other than the Russians and the Chinese.
Well, yeah, the Chinese especially.
Yeah. But like for the United States, if Starship gets a couple thousand launches under its belt and it's got a near perfect record, what's stopping you from launching out of Louisiana and up through the United States in that inclination? What's stopping you at that point if it is that reliable? The public pressure is probably the only thing that stops you. And is it enough if people are that used to it launching? That becomes the question mark.
Yeah, I mean, people have gotten used to Falcon at this point, so who knows when it comes time for Starship. Of course, though, it's going to be a big shock once it launches, literally and figuratively. It's going to have the sonic booms and the pressure waves both on launch and coming back. And if the windows rattle for Falcon 9, I am scared to see what's going to happen to those windows with Starship.
It'll certainly be interesting. Buy better windows.
I mean, there are hurricane windows out there because it's Florida, but still. Oh, boy. What do you think, Ryan? We got a little bit of time here, I think, until SES-2, second engine start 2, which is about a 6-second burn. And then all the satellites should be deployed about a half hour from now.
Yeah. They should. Yeah, because I think the last deploy is what, 104?
Approximately, yeah.
I mean, yeah. We could hang out if we want to hang out. You know, if you guys got questions, we can hang out here. I mean, unless you guys don't want us.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you can tag us at NASA Spaceflight at NSF in the meantime for those questions as we continue to wait for the relight of the Merlin vacuum engine. And again, we'll see if we end up seeing the satellites, because a reminder that in all the media photos they put out, there was a lot of stuff that was blurred. So that may be why we don't see it. But if you want some fun numbers, this marked SpaceX's 681st total launch, 72nd of the year, 8th of the month. It's also the 144th launch anywhere on the globe, and is now flown 300 consecutive successful missions for the Falcon family. That's awesome. Falcon 9, 651st orbital flight, the 332nd for SpaceX from Space Launch Complex 40, the busiest launch pad in the world, and Shortfall of Gravitas continuing its near-perfect record with 158 out of 159. And SpaceX done pretty good. In the meantime, they are at 284 successful landings in a row. I did see a question from someone, Ryan. Do we know if this is one where they would deorbit the stage, or is this going to be a graveyard orbit? What's going to happen once the satellites are deployed with this stage too?
They'll deorbit the second stage. It'll probably get dunked right into the Indian Ocean, right where they dunk pretty much all their second stages, especially for their Starlink missions. I think there's no TAMs out for that. Yeah, or it's just below. I think where they're dunking is just south of Australia. Is where the second stage is going to go. Once it's all said and done, especially in low Earth orbit, to pop this thing up to parking orbit, the graveyard orbit, it'd have to go beyond GEO, and I doubt there's enough prop left in that thing, and they also don't have the emission extension kit on it to do that, really. So they'll flip the boost, they'll flip the stage around, they'll ignite the Merlin engine in a retrograde burn, and it'll just splash down in the southern Indian Ocean, basically.
Yep. I mean, that's what we're used to for all these low Earth orbit ones. Trying to be good space neighbors, because for those who don't know, there was a lot of space junk out there. In the early days, it was you launch, and once you separate the satellites, whatever was there was kind of there. So eventually, they finally got to the idea of having that graveyard orbit for ones that are going out towards, as you point out, geostationary orbit, pretty far out orbits, rather than having to burn up all the fuel and everything to then have it come back and re-enter in a safe way. They just have an orbit where all the junk goes to live. But yeah, for those lower ones, there's basically a rule now that anything that launches into space has to have a way of deorbiting itself or getting back down or out of the way of concerns for other satellites, because there's a lot of stuff up there now. So that's why a lot of times you won't see it go into a full orbit initially. They'll go into a sort of parking orbit to check everything out. Or, like this, they'll plan to deorbit the second stage. Or, they put certain satellites in a low enough orbit that they will kind of decay naturally over the course of a couple of years if something doesn't go right. And yeah, I hate to bring it up, but we saw that with BlueBird 7, which was the one on New Glenn's third flight that didn't fully make it into orbit. Or into its proper orbit, at least. It was in an orbit where, it was still able to burn up. They didn't have enough propellant to put it into space the rest of the way, so they used propellant to make sure it got out of space the rest of the way safely. Coming up now, again, on that next burn for the Merlin vacuum engine. That coming up in about 8 minutes from now. By the way, Ryan, do we know how many relights a Merlin vacuum can do, or at least what the most that we've seen is on one? Ryan has the answer for that one.
I think it's like 3 or 4 or something like that. I think it depends on how much. I know with the mission extension kit, they can do what is it? They can add extra T-tab when that's like kind of part of the mission extension kit, if I remember correctly. They can add like another bulb with T-tab or something to reignite it. I think the number of reignitions depends on how much T-tab they have on board. I think because the turbo pumps are still basically Merlin. I think it's, if I remember correctly, I think it's the combustion chamber and the nozzle that's really the biggest difference on the MVAC. But it's been a while since I've looked at it.
The T-tab, by the way, triethyl aluminum, triethyl borane.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that is used to actually ignite the engines, that's basically just chemical touch and go kablooey kind of thing. How does that work for those who don't know?
It's a hypergolic fuel. Basically, you get it in contact with like liquid oxygen or kind of stuff. It'll just auto ignite, basically. It's a really quick and dirty way for ignition. And it's also, you also have to be really careful around it too. Because it's kind of a dangerous thing. It's hypergolics, so they're not the greatest. I bet you can talk a lot about how careful they had to be around the OMS pods when shuttle came back. Just in case there was a leak or something along those lines during reentry or when it was sitting on the ground. So it's stuff you got to be careful around. They of course don't use that on Starship. Starship uses. They used to use torch igniters. Now they use acoustic igniters. So no moving parts. They basically take methane and gaseous methane, gaseous oxygen, and put it through a kind of like a nozzle to put it at like supersonic speeds, which then vibrates a piece inside the igniter at resonance. And the resonance then increases the temperature of that stuff until it auto-ignites, and then it ignites the engine. And you can hear it clear as day. If you go back and watch like the 33 engine static fire of Booster 19, you hear the ignition of the igniters along with the pre-burners, and then the main MCCs, and it just goes all within like milliseconds.
There we go. That was a little bit loud. Good morning, everybody.
Yeah.
For those just joining, coming up on the second burn here after the launch of BlueBird satellites 8, 9, and 10 on a Falcon 9 from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. All right, Kit 44KT was wondering, while we're talking about the graveyard orbit, will SpaceX ever attempt to recover some of the approximately 30 Falcon upper stages that are still in graveyard orbits, but possibly using Starship?
I mean, there's Falcon 9 stages up there. There's a lot more up there that needs to be recovered. I think eventually we'll find a way to recover our space junk. Old dead satellites, debris floating around, plus the spent stages. Because there's a lot of Centaurs up there as well. There's a lot of Centaurs. There's a lot of Russian stages. There's, of course, the Falcon 9 stages up there. There's a ton of stuff that's up there. I think it'll take something like Starship alongside a large net or something, because you have to find a way to grab onto it, and it's not like it's easy, because you have to try to match relative. And that should be chill down or getting ready to ignite SES here. That should be MVAC chill down here. You can see the gas is flowing out, so re-chill of the MVAC engine before SES2 would be my guess. You need to figure out a way to safely, grab onto something, and if you're not at the same relative velocity as that object, that's not going to be easy. I think SpaceX will try something at some point, I know there are companies that are looking at ways at grabbing onto spent stages or dead satellites and deorbiting them so they can burn up in the atmosphere. The other way is to hook up to it and then dump it into deep space, or you could just dump it towards the sun, although that takes a decent amount of delta V to do that. I don't know. There are ways to clean it up, and I hope someone does, because there's a lot of junk up there, and it'd be nice just to have operational stuff up there. That's kind of one of the nice things about Starlink is when they have a satellite that dies, if it were to like die entirely, it's in such a low orbit that it'll have enough drag and it'll burn up on its own. But they also even use the ion thruster to deorbit it itself. So they deorbit their old sats. So that's one of the nice things. They are putting a lot of satellites up there, but they can, but they're in a low enough orbit that they'll deorbit themselves quickly, relatively quickly, or they can be deorbited quickly with their own engines. But yeah.
I mean, one of the other things is if you have something as large as Starship going into an area which is just filled with space junk, you got to admit that sounds a little on the scary side there.
Yeah, can be.
Especially if parts fell off or decay or other things from those older satellites that are up there. Last thing you use one of those dinging the heat shield, and then you have an issue with Starship getting back. As we've seen, a small ding to heat shields can be catastrophic. So it seems dangerous, just saying. Maybe something smaller, like Starship launches a robotic kind of garbage disposal, so to speak. But I don't know if Starship itself would be the one to grab them. Coming up just a couple minutes now from that engine burn. Be braced, folks. It's a long one. 6 seconds approximately. I don't know if you're going to be able to stay through the whole thing. If you'll be able to stay awake for it and be alert and conscious, we're all going to have to try, chat. See if we can make it the 6 seconds, okay? Shazbird coming in, by the way, saying, good morning from Louisiana, y'all. Glad this launch went off without any issues. Absolutely. That's what we like to see. Again, hopefully we get those 3 satellites deployed and all is good. Also, that's the only way I ever say Y''ALL is if it's read in a super chat. That is not a word in my normal everyday language. I'm not DOS. It's the problem of not being a Southerner. It's being a New Yorker, basically.
And ignition.
There we go. And shutdown. Did everyone stay awake for the whole 6 seconds? I hope you did. And there we go. So again, the next deployment should start less than 10 minutes from now with the first satellite deploy. Again, we'll see what SpaceX and AST Space choose to show, because they don't always show it. But we have confirmation of nominal orbital insertion. So the burn worked exactly as planned. They are in the orbit that they need to be for those 3 satellites to deploy. So that's what we want to hear. Unlike the last BlueBird launch, which was an off-nominal orbital insertion, now we have the normal. That's normal. Did I just pull a John Innsbrucker? Normal.
You did.
/ nominal.
You definitely did.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a day, folks. It's been a day. But yeah, it seems like chat made it through. It's weird. I'm so used to seeing the engine bell glow because it's the longer burns. It's like, nope, just 6 seconds. That's it. So what's with all the venting now then that we see?
That's just venting off, you're just, purging the lines, that kind of thing. That's the chill down vent. You can see ice there. It's totally normal. It's just liquid and gas freezing in the really, 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 really cold space. It's cold up there. So
yeah, it's totally normal and expected. And again, like we were talking about, there technically is one more burn, and that'll be the deorbit burn. But in terms of with actual payload on board, that was it. So again, it will start BlueBird 8 deploying about 54 minutes, 27 seconds approximately into flight. So coming up on that in about 6 minutes. And 5 minutes and 20 seconds after that will be BlueBird 9. And then 5 minutes and 20 seconds after that will be BlueBird 10. And that is the 3 of them. So that is where we are at in the timeline at the moment. 98 Central is wondering, has Falcon 9 second stage done shorter engine burns than that? I mean, for Starlink, they're what, like 3 seconds, if that?
Yeah, they're not very long for Starlink missions. They're pretty quick. So it's done quick ones. I think they've even done it. It's just kind of like a burst for like a second or two, just to get that last bit of circularization. I know there was one point they were trying not to do circularization burns or something like that on Falcon. I have to remember. That's an Alex thing to ask about again, but it's been a minute.
Yeah, what's he doing? Sleeping like a normal person or something? Jeez.
Right? Jeez.
What sleep even is at this point. Yeah, the only thing I know of sleep is my cat, which is, he's asleep right now, kind of near me, those who know Jake. Let's see. Yeah, someone said blink and you miss it. Let me keep looking for some questions as we wait for the deployment sequence to begin. Let's see. Here's one. I would have to think on this one, but Gabriel's asking, what was your favorite launch this year so far? I mean, Ryan, I can guess your answer. And
Yeah,
I'm
Flight
gonna-
12.
Yeah, there it is.
Fine. I mean, after following everything that they've done to that pad, to that rocket for as long as it has, as long as I have been, finally getting to see that newer version fly, and then new pad fly, or at least be used, I should say, was awesome. It was the split exhaust looked exactly like I thought it was going to. The only thing I was curious about was how the top deck plate would go, and it did not obscure the launch as much as I thought it would. It kind of was just out of the way. It looks so awesome, and I'm glad it went off. I'm glad it went as well as it did. The next favorite one this year will very hopefully be Flight 14. Which is probably not going to be till October, end of September, October. But that is one I'm certainly going to. I have not been to Starbase yet, and I'm going to try to get down for that flight because that should be the first orbital, and it'll be the first try that they'll try to catch a booster, and then also try to catch the ship as well. I'm going to see if I can try to make that. Because it'd be cool to be down there, they catch the booster, and then like 12 hours later, or maybe like a day later, because they can keep the ship up there for 48 hours. So at that point, they would probably keep it up there for about a day, and then get the booster off the pad, and then catch the ship. If I can see both, especially a first ship catch, that'll be probably the greatest thing I've ever seen in spaceflight history. So.
Jerry, if you're still with us, what about your favorite launch so far this year?
It's been a mixed bag. I mean, I think Artemis 1 sticks out, right? That's kind of the obvious choice. But I think probably have to pick Artemis 1 as the safe bet here.
You mean 2?
Artemis 2, yeah. Artemis 2 would be... I actually, let's do this. Starship Flight 12 and Artemis 2 are 1A, 1B for me. Because seeing humans go back to the moon again is going to be awesome. It was totally awesome to see that, and I can't wait for Artemis 3 is going to be. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. and then Artemis
We're about 10 seconds away
of course,
from the first payload deploy, and these satellites are
landing back on
part
this
of
would be awesome.
AST Space Mobile's next generation constellation.
Again, I don't think we'll see the first deploy, but we should see the other two. So we'll have to listen in for confirmation of that. Should be happening shortly. And then I'll give you my answer, which the answer may shock you. Not clickbait. OMG. And that deploy, I believe, should be happening shortly. Again, the animation they have is all approximate times. You know, if Falcon burns a little bit hotter, a little bit slower, changes ever so slightly, you know, the numbers will change by a little bit. But hopefully with the first one deployed, then we will get to see the other two, BlueBirds 9 and 10, be released. So my answer, if I had to put one down, if we're not counting Artemis, I think it's got to be Falcon Heavy's return. We haven't seen Falcon Heavy fly in years. We hadn't seen a dual booster landing even longer than that, because the most recent one prior to this flight.
So we should have confirmation of payload deploy when we go over our next ground station. So we'll update you as we get info. But the second satellite deployment is coming up at T+59 minutes. So we'll take another short break.
We'll keep talking in the meantime. But yeah, it was, October 24 was the most, or October 24 was the most recent one. The most recent reusable with the side cores was June of 24. To have that again, and now to see one of them over at LZ2 and the other at LZ40, I am in love with LZ40. I'm just going to say that. So that's why that's, I think, up there on my list as well. As great as Artemis 2 is, I mean, that's still going to take the cake, but close second for me would be Falcon Heavy's return. And in theory, we should have 2 more of those this year. I mean, we have the Nancy Grace Roman telescope that should be on its way from Maryland very shortly. I know people had spotted the Pegasus barge heading towards the Chesapeake Bay.
It did leave the Port of Baltimore already. I think it left the Port of Baltimore 3 days ago. Something like that.
It did. It actually took a brief pit stop down by Norfolk, but it is officially back on the way. Should be here about Sunday, I believe. So look forward to seeing that here soon. And keep looking at SCL and should show up on there.
Yeah. All right, that's going to be exciting. And then got to remember what the other Falcon Heavy is. I'm going to have to check next space flight, which you can sort by rocket type for launches here.
Lander. Griffin.
The Griffin lander, yes. The Astrobotic.
I think it's
October? Next space flight says no earlier than November. But soon. And as of now, the 2 that are remaining for this year of the Roman Telescope and Griffin are both set to be RTLS missions for the side cores, so landing at LZ2 and LZ40. Again, they're now back over tracking stations, it seems like. Probably the one over there in Australia. I know there's a big addition in Canberra. But separation has been confirmed of the first of those 3 BlueBird satellites. We should be, about a minute and a half-ish to 2 minutes away from the deployment of the next satellite. It is nice to at least still have a heavy lift vehicle going. Obviously, we want New Glenn to get back out onto the pad and get launching soon. We know, of course, there's the Blue Moon Mark 1 lander that Blue is ready to launch at some point, hoping they can get their rocket ready for that. But also worth noting, as we talked about when Jared Eisenman popped in on the Flame Trench on Friday, which, if you didn't know, NASA administrator came and talked with us for about 40 minutes during our news show on Friday. The Flame Trench happened to be our 100th episode. And, I mean, he was saying that it is not out of the realm of possibility that
Now today we are delivering a
move.
total of 3 satellites to low Earth orbit, BlueBird 8, 9, and 10. And SpaceX previously launched AST's first 5 commercial satellites, BlueBird 1 through 5, in September of 2024. And we're expecting the next payload deploy in about 15 seconds from now.
But he did say it's very possible that they might actually end up moving the mission to another rocket, such as a Falcon Heavy with extended fairing. He hasn't ruled it out. Obviously, they want it to launch on Blue's rockets, but given the timeline as needed, it's not impossible to see it potentially shift vehicles. So may still see it this year. Wait for confirmation on the deploy.
Block 2, BB9, separation confirmed.
There we go. And finally, an onboard view here. Let's see the glow of the Earth up in the top right corner.
And here's our first views of the payload adapter.
Also very glad that we get to see the satellites as we look at the adapter here. But another 5-ish minutes or so, and the last one should deploy. Maybe we'll be able to catch a small glimpse of it. That seems like a surprisingly large payload adapter for Falcon 9, but I mean, Ryan, they can create a whole bunch of adapters as needed, right?
Yeah, they can make a lot of different things to suit the occasions required. So, yep.
Also, that ice that you see frozen on there, that's normal, right?
Yeah, that's normal. There's nothing off-normal about that.
Yeah, if it gets really big and starts spreading out, especially during launch, like we've seen once before, that's bad. This is not. And even so, once they get ready to start up the engines again, is for the deorbit burn. Once they do that, all that gets knocked loose, and it's no longer an issue. So yeah, that's what you get for putting super cool propellants and things in a very cold vacuum space. See parts of it kind of flaking away too. Again, totally normal on that, but it is cool being able to see some of the Earth bathed in that Earth light. A whole new respect for Earth light after all the Artemis 2 astronaut quotes and everything while they were on their way to the moon and back. And yes, Fluffy, Nancy Grace, Roman Space Telescope launching on Falcon Heavy. Yes. It's going to be awesome. A couple more minutes to go till that final deploy. Been a beautiful launch, lighting up the early morning Florida skies. Probably waking up some people on the Space Coast. And hopefully a bunch of people got a chance to go out and actually see it. I know we've been having some rain. I'm a little further south of the Space Coast. We had a whole bunch of rain going on in clouds, so don't know if I would have even been able to see it if I wasn't hanging out with all of you here watching the launch. Yeah, that is a bulky payload adapter, but they're decent-sized payloads. I mean, we're talking between the three of them approximately 13.5 metric tons of mass stuck on top of that rocket. And
yeah,
I don't know if that's counting, and that's not counting the adapter, right? Most likely.
No, likely not counting. It's likely just the payload itself. So the adapter weighs a little bit too, but yeah.
So yeah, all of that adds up, but there's some big old satellites obviously going to need the larger adapters and everything. And again, this is all part of their Block 2 network of satellites for AST Space Mobile as part of their cellular broadband network in space to help supplement coverage on the ground, or at least to places that are either rural or have limited to no access to those cellular needs, to be able to kind of fill in the gaps in networks. And 1 through 5 are already in space of the Block 1s, BlueBird 6 on Block 2, launched by India, is in orbit. BlueBird 7 did not make it into its intended orbit after an issue with the New Glenn launch vehicle. And now 2 of the 3 have already been deployed here on Falcon 9 for BlueBirds 8, 9. And now we're just waiting for BlueBird 10 to release. Also, I love all these space companies. So many things are bird related, even though birds can't fly in space. The whole vacuum
And if
thing.
you're just joining us, this is the
died.
live coverage of the BlueBird 8 to 10 mission for AST Space Mobile.
Right into the sunlight there. Billy, it looks really cool. I just don't know if we're going to be able to see anything there.
BlueBird Block 2, BB8, separation confirmed. All payloads successfully confirmed.
And that's all payloads.
That's what we like to hear. All 3 payloads deployed. So, of course, they're going to take some time now once they're in their proper orbits to unfurl and open everything up and get them all functioning and tested. So, once these satellites launch, some of them can take 6 months to a year before they actually go into operation. But with that seems like a successful mission. Of course, they will eventually be doing their deorbit, but I think that's a chance for us to wrap up our coverage here as well at NSF. Ryan Weber, thank you for joining me on commentary here.
Pleasure as always, Sawyer. Always fun to cover Falcon 9 launch and cover all the way to payload deploy. Don't always get that opportunity. SpaceX a lot of times cuts the feed off, but yeah, nice to see successful payload deploy and a good mission.
Absolutely. And of course, Jerry Pike out in the field. Thank you for being out there.
Yeah, of course. It was nice to launch. This one's, middle of the night. We'll get back to the routine of early morning coming back on Sunday. So have another one coming up soon.
Yep. Hopefully you'll join us for that. If you're not already, subscribe so that way you know when those next live streams happen, and you can also check out the next Spaceflight app to find out when the next launch is. Kevin Michael Reed has been pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, and producing. I'm Sawyer Rosenstein. I have been your host for this launch on this early morning. Thank you, everybody, for either staying awake with us or waking up to join us or just going about your day with us for this launch, and we will see you all for the next one.
And here we go.
There's the deluge. Here's ignition.
Following up.
Did it just do a Kerbal?
back to the moon and beyond.
Put that in the big bag, you know.
Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, it sure looks like a perfect world.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
We did have an observation. 343 unfolds to go.
It's orange!
Water towers can fly!
Bingo! Right in the center. Where's Jacqueline? There it is!
That was surreal.
That's not what we want to see.
No!
Oh my God.
Yikes, you bet. We don't need any more of these.